Here we are going to just continue getting our animation for the gun ready for import into Unity. Once you have the basic modeling done, you can start to test how things react, and you'll start to discover that maybe you didn't attach everything, or something quite didn't get grouped the way you expected. Start to move my arm, and I realized I hadn't attached the gun to the hand. Using a finger bone in the hand, I parent that to the whole main gun object. Keep in mind that the unattached trigger, hammer, and cylinder with the bullets attached are their own objects. Previously, I'd created a little bit of an armature for the gun cylinder, and well, now we're using the old rigid rigging technique to parent that hand bone, finger bone, index finger bone here, to the gun frame. And of course, then you realize that the cylinders and the other parts aren't moving along with it. So what you do is just, for this purpose, grab those items and group them to the gun frame with a Control-J join. That'll help the process of basically guaranteeing that they're included. It's always good to double check from the perspective of the camera. And now setting up for the animation. Halfway through, you get the gun recoiling, and of course, for a nice looping type animation, you want it that the end point matches your start point. Having it fire over 1 second is adequate. 30 frames per second project, so at 15 frames, the recoil is at its sort of apogee or peak, and then of course it goes back down to the starting position. In Blender, you can play with the way the keyframes are interpolated for the animation. By default, they're set to Bezier. Sometimes a linear or a constant animation gives a more choppy feel. You can introduce noise, curves like bounce, and then sometimes having a little bit of a gun fires quickly, and then you have a sort of slow reaction. So sort of like a reaction that doesn't look so good there sped up, but you get a sense of how it looks. And then you just, you do it to what you want for your personal preference, what type of feel you're going for. Also doing this here to demonstrate the incredible versatility of Blender in terms of being able to use the same assets over and over again to create all sorts of different animations. I'll do another video after this to show how we can use this for a melee type, bashing with the butt of the gun kind of melee action, before we get into things like reloading and stuff like that. If you're going for more of an arcade feel, it's always good. I always start with this sort of the essentials first, the bare minimums to make my game work. If you're going for an arcade feel, less is more. I was about to export everything, and then I realized, well, let's obviously texture material, give materials to our hand models and our jacket, our forearm. It works from the previous experiment in Unity, so we might as well commit ourselves. Just picking each item, and before you export the texture model materials, it's a good idea again to check in camera view as you go through the animation in case other parts suddenly become visible. You can see a finger there, pinky finger or ring finger, Again, we don't have to worry about the armature there for the barrel. It won't appear. But looking in closely, you can see sort of on the left-hand side of the handle, there's a gray piece, and that's a finger. So it needs some skin coloring. And now we're looking pretty good. Select all the items at the right. You'll see the blue highlight. Deselect your camera, deselect your light. Have everything unfolded. Copy, embed for the textures. Selected objects. Z forward. Positive Y up. Geometry, apply modifiers, armature, deform bones only, then bake the animations into your FBX. In Unity on the import, you're going to get some messages sometimes. There's overlapping vertices. It was just a pinky and one part of the gun. The best way is just to look at it in the folder where you have it saved as the FBX, and you'll start to see on the side how it looks. It doesn't look bad. Whatever's missing or cut out there, can't even see it. So it's pretty good to continue and progress with what we have. You have to do the usual things in terms of creating an avatar, make the association with the animations. Sometimes you want to look at things like root bones. Unity sometimes wants to make sure it has that information. The best thing is to rename the animation. Blender will export it, unfortunately, with regards to the name of the rig or armature. It can get confusing, especially if you have several animations. Of course, you'll want to create an avatar from your model. It's a good idea to create the avatar from the shooting model because the shooting has more things going on with it. And then if you have an idle animation or nothing going on, you can use the avatar derived from the shooting. Bringing into your animator controller, you start to get a sense of how it looks. You just want to do the usual previews. Now it's time to do coding, and for me, controlling my animator controller and using a custom change animation state sort of controller function that will play the animation at certain moments. There's rules about how it will play. It won't interfere with itself if something's already playing, etc., etc. It just gives you more control at a particular point. So I want to make sure definitely when the gun is shooting, instantiating a bullet, that the shooting animation is playing. And then I change it back. Of course, you have to adjust your fire point. Here I'm setting up a muzzle flash. It's very similar to techniques we've already seen elsewhere. Basically creating a game object that will not be active for the most part. When the bullet gets instantiated, that's when that object will become active to appear for a frame. It's not 100% based on frame rates and things like that. VSync can have an effect. But sometimes in a game like this, having a bit of a random factor where things are kind of not 100% consistent, it gives it a little bit of a retro feel, like a sort of like an old school game where things sometimes didn't always quite work, and has a certain charm. Depends what you're going for and what you're willing to settle for in terms of your final result. Of course, you can refine it and tweak it for later on. And that's it. We're basically at a stage now where we've got a gun that fires. Flash will go off every now and then. See it there. And yeah,